This is I Make Beats. Welcome to my channel. It was brought to my attention by a subscriber that he wanted me to go a little bit deeper pertaining to the MIDI files. So I'm going to try to break it all the way down to the most common denominator after I eat this chocolate chip cookie and drink this milk. So stick with me. So let's get this party started. Let me move the black box out the way. I tell you, it is really a mini version of the MPCX to me. I don't know, this thing is amazing. But let's get into it. Also, let me give a quick shout out to my man Micro Mix. He actually got his hands on the sample bundle pack that myself, Anubis, and Rembrandt Media had done together, and he made a video. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. And if you haven't gotten the bundle pack, the link will be in the description. Alright, let's do this. And what I'm showing now is really for the standalone user. So for us standalone users, there are two types of MIDI files, okay? There are your standard MIDI files that can be loaded in any DAW, and then you have the MIDI files that are created by the MPC. Those MIDI files are called MPC patterns. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and load up your standard MIDI file and show you how it functions on the MPCs, the Live, the One, and the X in standalone. And then I'll also show you how the MPC pattern type MIDI file functions in the MPC in standalone. All right, I don't want to skip any steps. So what we're gonna do is, let's just say that you have an SD card or a thumb drive. In my case, I have a thumb drive with my MIDI files on them, okay? So we're gonna browse. I'm gonna go to Places. I'm gonna go to my USB, and I'm gonna scroll to a folder called MIDI, and there it is. I'm gonna open that. Now I'm gonna go to All MIDI Files 2020, and we'll just go to, let's see here. Alright, let's just go here. There we go. Alright, so let's just pick, I'm just going to pick randomly. We're going to pick G major. Okay, we'll open that. And we'll do the two extended chords. Okay, and we'll do an E major, or G flat major. Okay, so as you can see here, in this folder, there are all kinds of chords in here. Diminished chords, suspended chords. And if you look, I have your standard MIDI, your dot MIDI right here. And then right underneath that, for that same chord type, I also have a dot MPC pattern, okay, which is basically the same. It's a MIDI file, but it was created by the MPC to produce the same chord, okay? So these two types of MIDI files, they act differently in the MPC, okay? So let's start with this G flat major 9, your regular standard MIDI. So anything that's dot MIDI can be loaded in any DAW, but we can also load it in standalone in the three MPCs, the Live, the One, and the X. So let's just go ahead and load that. Now look what it says. The current sequence is used. Now, it's saying that because I don't start my MPC blank. I always use a template of some kind. That way, because we all know when you turn on your MPC, you have to go diving. You got to find your kick drum, your snare, your hi-hat, your tom. You got to find your, what kind of piano do I want? I got to find my strings. I got to find my bass. I don't have time for that. So I use templates when I turn on my MPC. So most of my tracks are already used, okay? Well, they already have stuff on them. So what the MPC is going to do for a standard MIDI file is it's going to place that MIDI file on a blank track, but it also creates a new sequence. So let's do that. Let me do it. So now I just loaded. We're going to go back to the main screen. And we have sequence 1 here. You see that I have all drums. That's one of the template settings that I set up. But we're going to scroll to sequence 2. Now look what it says at the top there. There it is, that G flat major 9. It creates a new sequence and it places the data on a blank track, okay? So if I go into the grid here, we'll see that chord. Let me zoom out so you can see it. And there it is. So that G flat chord is just one chord, okay? So if I want this to sound like music, I would have to go back in the folder, find another chord, which we'll do just so you can see. We did the 9. Let's do an 11, A flat major. Let's do this one, A flat minor 11. Let's just do that. Now what's going to happen again? It's a regular MIDI file. So look what it's telling me, the same message. So what it is going to do is it's going to place that MIDI file on a blank. It's going to create a sequence. So now there's a sequence 3 now. See, there it is. And it placed that data on track 1 for that sequence. So let me zoom out. And there's the data, okay? So I want you to grasp this. This is really cool. Now it's a little bit of work when you're dealing with standard MIDI files, okay? You have to upload as many MIDI file patterns as you request or require, okay? We just did 2, but you may want 6, you may want 4. However many MIDI patterns you want, you upload those patterns. Once you've gotten them uploaded, of course we don't want our MIDI files all spread out like they are now, because every time I upload a standard MIDI file, the MPC is going to create a new sequence. We don't want that. But let's just say we had 6 chords here, or 6 different MIDI patterns. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to copy this one on this sequence. I'm going to copy this from the grid, and I'm going to go paste it into the very first sequence where the first MIDI pattern was. We are going to copy this. I'm just going to drag over it like so. I'm going to hold shift, and down here notice it gives me the display cut, copy, paste, mute, whatever. So we're just going to hit copy. I'm going to come out of this, go back to the main. Now I'm going to go back to sequence 1 or sequence 2. Sequence 1 was already there. So in sequence 2 we know we have this G flat major 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom this, shrink this down. Shrink this down. And then I'm going to move my cursor to the end of the chord. That first chord there. And I'm just going to hold shift and hit paste. And it gives me the other chord. You see that? So you would repeat this process for however many MIDI chord patterns you've uploaded that are now on multiple sequences. You would just copy those chords from the sequence and place it on the very first sequence. Now that let's just say we did 6 like this, okay? Let's pretend like we did 6. All right, so we just did that. So now what I can do is I can go to this last sequence and I can remove it. I can clear it. I don't need it. I just go up to the pencil and I hit clear. Yes, I do, clear it. So now sequence 3 is like it was before. There's nothing in there, no data, it's blank. Which is fine, because I only want the sequence that has my chord or my MIDI data. Okay, so there it is. Now, let's go a little deeper. We have our MIDI data here, but if I hit the play button, all you heard was a drum sound. And the reason why is because the program that I have on this sequence is a drum program. So in order to hear the MIDI data, to get the MPC to trigger the notes for that MIDI pattern or those multiple MIDI patterns, you need to upload a key group program or a plugin of some type. We're just going to use a plugin because I don't have to go into key groups and search through my files of different key groups that I have. I do have a lot of them, but it takes too long. So we'll use a plugin. I'm going to change this to electric. We'll select that. And we'll change the default to a piano. Okay, so there we have it. So now when I play, hit the play button. Okay, So as you can see, each chord is a 4 count length. So they're holding that chord for 4 counts. But what if I don't want that? Okay, what if I want to make the chord unique to me? So what I can do is I can highlight the chord. I can hold down shift. And on the screen here it says end, right? So I just hit the end button, and now I can shrink the chord back to the length that I want it to be. So what if I want it just to be a 1 count, or maybe I want it to be a 2 count instead of a 4 count? I would do the same thing to this chord, okay? And all I'm going to do is just shrink the end. Now I want to move it, but keep it exactly where it is. So I'm going to hit nudge. I'm going to nudge it in so that it meets up with these notes. Here we go. So now let's just pretend like this was 6 or 7 different MIDI patterns, okay? I can hold shift, hit copy, then take my cursor to where the chord progression ends. Now I can hit shift paste. It's going to repaste that. And of course that sounds like crap, but I'm not trying to make music right now. I'm just trying to show you the process of loading standard MIDI files into the MPC. It's going to place those MIDI files on a new sequence every time you load one. Once you get them all in, you grab them, you copy them to the very first sequence, and then you erase the other sequences. Now let's look at the MPC pattern. I cleared everything out, so there's just sequence 1 now. What we're going to do is we're going to go back in here, but this time we're going to load the A flat minor 9 MPC pattern. Now look what happens when I load that. Look, the screen didn't even move. I hit load and it just, so you got to make sure you're paying attention when you hit load. But look what it did. We were on sequence 1, track 1, but because I loaded an MPC pattern, the MPC keeps you on the sequence that you're on, but places the MIDI data on a blank track. Because I told you I use templates, so if I go back, look, there was already something on 7, already something on 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So it wouldn't place that MPC pattern MIDI data on one of these tracks. It couldn't. So it automatically keeps me on the same sequence, but places the MIDI data on a blank track. So if I go to the grid, there's my MIDI data. Now if I shrink this down, oops, and there you see it. It's the same length, same chord length. And last but not least, once you've placed whatever type of MIDI pattern into the MPC and you've got them all set the way you want, the last step would be to go to the track that the MIDI data is on. Okay, we want to go to that track, hit the pencil, and we could take all of that and create a new MPC pattern or a new .MPC pattern by hitting export as pattern. Now it will take all those MIDI file data that we combine together into one sequence or one track, and it will recreate a brand new MIDI pattern for you that you can save and load at any time. And there you have it. That's pretty much it. That's the process. So I hope this was helpful for someone. Gomchin, I think that's how you say your name. I didn't say that right, forgive me. But I hope this answers your questions. To everyone else, like, share, subscribe, click that notification bell so you know when I come out with new content. If you have something that you would like for me to discuss, please leave me a comment in the description and I will make sure to get to it. Until next time, this is I Make Beats.